CPAC Australia, please welcome Senior Fellow at the Menzies Research Centre, Nick Cater, Victorian Liberal MP, Bev McArthur, and Western Australian Liberal MP, Nick Goiran.
As those of you here at the earlier session this afternoon know, I've got a real passion for endangered species now. That was the greater glider we were trying to save in the Chulumban forest along with the red goshawk. And we're going to carry on that theme with another endangered species, and that is solid Conservative members of Parliament in our state governments around the country.
We're a rare breed, Nick.
Yeah, so we have, of course, Bev McArthur from the Upper House in Victoria, a bit of a maverick in the Upper House. We shall ask what that means in a minute. And Nick Goiran from the very endangered species in the WA Parliament, of course, a Liberal in the Upper House. One of 7, I think you said. But
one of 7, one of the survivors.
But you're still not officially the opposition party.
No, that's determined in the Legislative Assembly, and there we've got a magnificent 2 members out of 59 in the Legislative Assembly, so yes. It's been quite a challenge.
I remember that your leader after the last election was rather surprised to see you didn't get a ministerial car or didn't get a government car anymore because you weren't the opposition.
No, that's right.
Look, I think that the theme is, look, how are we going to fight back? Because we can't, this has to change. I mean, it changed last time. We've got to make it change this time, even though it seems a long way to go to get you back. I mean, I don't know, what sort of saucepans does people use? I'd love a saucepan that had the same kind of Teflon on it that Dan Andrews has got, right?
That's right, Nick. He's untouchable, it seems. But look, full disclosure here, we're amongst friends, aren't we? Chatham House rules. I'm a breastfeeder, not a chest feeder, just by way of information. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and I've got a husband. And you know what? I love men. I think they're fantastic, those men that stand up for women especially. And who would have thought in this day and age that I, like some others that you've heard today, have to be here on a platform fighting for women's rights. It's an incredible situation we've got ourselves into in this day and age. But I come from the woke Danistan state of Victoria, as you all know, where we were the most locked down country state in the world, where children got barred from playing in playgrounds, where a mother in my electorate, as somebody mentioned before, got handcuffed and dragged out of her house because she put up a Facebook post about freedom. This is an extraordinary situation, and we have legislation going through the Parliament that is despicable. In fact, I had to cross the floor on one piece of legislation. It's a big decision, crossing the floor against your own party, and that was on the gay conversion therapy bill, so-called. And why did I do that? Because I said I've not been put into Parliament to put parents, faith and medical practitioners into jail or get fined for counselling their children against transitioning pre-puberty. It's appalling. I couldn't stand for that. So we have this sort of legislation happening all the time. You can now change your birth certificate in Victoria, not from male to female or vice versa. You can be a gum leaf today and an oak leaf tomorrow if somebody gives you a stat dec after 12 months. This is the sort of stuff we are enduring in Victoria, let alone the indoctrination, not education, that's occurring in our schools. It's appalling. But Dan, he survives, Nick.
Yeah, well, Nick, this is what I don't get. I mean, listening to Bev, I mean, you haven't said anything controversial as far as I can see. Well, we shall check on social media in a minute, but my controversy radar may not be particularly acute. But look, this is common sense, isn't it? This is how we win back power, by just cutting through the bullshit, just talking about things as they are, not as the progressive elite imagine they would be, and we just play to our normal instincts.
Nick, it's actually not very complicated at all. It never has been, but unfortunately, as Conservatives, we have complicated the simple. All that actually needs to happen is that we need to stand on principle and we need to persevere, and those two P's will find a lot of support. And when you think about the different speakers that we've all been blessed to hear over the last 48 hours, each of them are people of principle. It's very clear what they stand for, and they also persevere in the articulation of their arguments. Now, each time that we do that, we attract support. If, in contrast to that, we take the approach of putting our finger in the breeze and checking the prevailing political conditions and determining our position as a result of that, which sadly we've seen time and time again within our party, then we suffer the consequences.
You know, there's two things we can do, Zach. And Zach Kirkup, who was the leader who took you to the last election, to the biggest swing against the party in history, he's a decent guy, but I think he might even agree himself now. He made the wrong call. He thought, well, we will win by moving further to the left. But it patently didn't work. Those who pulled their punches in the Liberal Party at the last federal election in the hope of holding off the Teal vote.
That went very well in Victoria.
Well, yeah, just ask Josh Frydenberg how well that went. Time and time again, we see all these examples of the party moving to the left and failing. We see this in the church, incidentally. Every time a church goes woke or starts to preach some sort of social guitar, social gospel, that doesn't work. The church loses support. Surely it's obvious, isn't it, Bev? We just stick to our knitting.
We absolutely should, Nick, and standing up for what you believe in. I've fought for values of freedom and the individual and free enterprise for over 50 years. I'm not about to stop now because some popularist tells me it's not conventional wisdom. We have to keep fighting and we have to keep standing up for what we believe in. And against the cancel culture and the identity politics that prevails. I mean, I came here on Friday, got called by a radio station to say, what was I doing going on a platform with white supremacists? No, they didn't even get to you, Nick. And I said, listen, I'm happy to prosecute the arguments about freedom and individual importance anywhere, at any time. And I fight for what I know those people in my electorate, and I have an electorate that covers about a third of rural Victoria, outside the tram tracks of Melbourne. And do you know what? They're at the moment enduring transmission lines that you've been talking about, Nick, that are going to crisscross this state of Victoria like a spider web. Steel towers for no good reason, because nobody will look at the new technology about how you might deliver energy. And as I say to people, you can't have green energy in inner Melbourne with brown transmission out in the rural areas. That's criminal.
I think we've got to listen to the voice from the bush a lot more, because that's often where these things get picked up, certainly on the renewable energy. Incidentally, I drove through your wonderful state in January. Terrific. I'd recommend that. I'd even do the whole drive, Sydney to Perth via Kalgoorlie, where Kalgoorlie is the Dallas of lithium-ion batteries, isn't it? It's where all the ingredients of lithium-ion batteries are there, and the people are digging up the ground like crazy. It's really going well, but your government not content with that. They have to put a spanner in the works. Any productive industry, agriculture, anything, with that awful sovereignty bill that went through Parliament.
Yeah, I think, Nick, the Aboriginal cultural heritage shambolic fiasco in Western Australia is a real lesson for all of Australia. We cannot afford to be complacent. So again, the principle here that was abused by the Labor government was the important principle of freedom of property. We had a piece of legislation literally bulldozed through the Parliament. When I say bulldozed, I mean first read, second read, third read through the Assembly in a single day, despite the fact that under the parliamentary laws in Western Australia, a bill is to stay on the table for 3 weeks. Now, that bulldozed legislation was going to affect any property owner with a piece of land greater than 1,100 square metres, They would need to get various permits and permissions. It stopped simple things like tree planting and digging of holes. Of course, it created a huge furore, and the people in regional Western Australia were most particularly aggrieved about that. When people raised concerns about this to the Labor government, what was the response? Was it a proper, principled response? No, it was vilification. We were told that we were racists for simply raising concerns. We were told that we were dog whistlers. We were told that we were dogs reverting or returning to our vomit. Such were the statesman-like comments of the now Premier of Western Australia. A massive revolt in Western Australia, a massive petition was tabled, and in the end, they had to U-turn, they had to backtrack, they had to backflip. And why I share the story, Nick, is because, again, it's a very important principle for every Australian of principle, perseverance and participation. And if we do that, we can actually turn things around.
We're all the same. We're all one nation, we are equal citizens, and we have to remember that. And thanks to the wonderful Jacinta Price for reminding that yesterday. Last time I flew from Perth to Melbourne, it was 6 a.m. when I got on the plane, and I was a bit confused. I thought, that's my flight number, but I'm not flying to Wiradjuri country. I wanted to fly to Melbourne. How do they do this? I didn't vote for this stuff. I don't want to have to become bilingual in order to live in this country.
Well, it gets worse, Nick, because if you want to see a worked example of what the actual application of the voice might look like, just look to Victoria, because we've had agreements now signed between the government and Aboriginal groups that give total power over what's going to happen in land, in water, everything a council does. 10 councils had no say in an agreement that was signed on their behalf. Now they've got to implement it. This is just a taste of what's going to happen. So we've had, like the voice, legislation without regulation, and let's get the regulation later. That's what they're asking with the voice. That's what we've got in Victoria. Passed the treaty bill. Now we've got the regulation. Everybody's starting to wake up. I've got a private property on the Great Ocean Road and the 12 Apostles, which will be compulsorily acquired by government, it looks. And I'll predict it'll be handed over to an Aboriginal corporation that controls that area. This is not one country for everybody. We are all being discriminated against, and I think everybody needs to get very alert as to what's happening in treaty agreements around this country.
Yeah, they just empower the Aboriginal elite, don't they? People who don't actually represent real Indigenous people with a connection to the land.
Well, exactly. And if they actually did something with the millions of dollars, and they're all being totally funded for absolutely everything here, millions and millions of dollars, to address any disadvantage. And I say I'm very happy to address disadvantage, but it shouldn't be based on ethnicity or geography. It should be on disadvantage. So not by the colour of your skin should you be treated or benefited in any way. Let's look after those people who are severely disadvantaged, and they're from all walks of life and from all backgrounds. I want to treat them all and make sure their disadvantage is overcome. But these things are not helping those people, as Jacinta points out every day, as to what's happening in Northern Australia. They are not being helped. And that $40 billion that's being used every year in this industry doesn't seem to have landed a blow on anybody.
That's right. We've got 2 minutes left, and I'm looking forward to the second most refreshing thing to come out of South Australia after Alex Antic, which is a glass of Cooper's Ale. So I think we should acknowledge the audience and the important role that people play by coming here. I mean, for me, and I want to get your view on this, both of you, just to meet people, to get real, to bring you in touch and remind you that this is a great country with great people who are imbibed with common sense. That's what happens to me every time I come here. You just get brought back to earth by, one, the the greatness of the Australian people, but secondly, their common sense.
And at the end of the day, Nick, if people feeling exasperated from time to time, they're not alone. I mean, the fact that there are so many people here over the last 48 hours tells us that people are not happy with the direction of where we are going in Australia. In my case, in Western Australia. Otherwise, why would people invest 2 days over a weekend to come to a political conference? And my encouragement to people is keep at it. Keep participating. If you're not happy with what is happening, get involved in a political party. I really appreciated the comments yesterday by the Honourable Tony Abbott. I mean, obviously, as a Liberal member of Parliament, I've got a heavy bias in terms of which political party people are going to join, as would Tony. But I thought he very respectfully said, get involved in the political party of your choice. And that's what people need to do, is do something. Absolutely, don't do nothing.
I agree totally with Nick. And can I say a big shout out not only to all of you who've come here, but to The Spectator, to ADH TV, to Sky News and to CPAC for giving people like Nick and I the opportunity to put a view about what's going wrong in Australia and how we should fix it. And absolutely, please hang in. Please join a political party. Join the Liberal Party, I'd prefer, actually. I've been in it about 50 years, so you might say I'm the eternal optimist, but I am. But we need good people. Good people walk away. That's not helping us. So thank you so much.
Please give a big round of applause for yourself and the hundreds of thousands of people that have been watching online on ADH TV. Thank you very much for a great weekend.